Guys are back for another UFC event. This week it's Jack Hermansson taking on Sean Strickland. Should be a pretty fun card overall. I feel like this is one of the better fight night cards in a while for the UFC. And we're coming off profitable week last week where we did well on both Bellator and Eagle FC. So hopefully you checked out those events and also checked out the predictions videos on the channel. We won some money betting wise, so that was good too. We've actually won 4 weeks in a row betting wise, so if you want to get on the Patreon, I think now is a good time to do it. But besides that, just want to try to get you guys to like the video, put a comment down below, tell me what you think, try to get some engagement on this video, get it shared out there. But outside of that, let's get right into the card, man. We got this first fight of the night. We got Malcolm Gordon. He's going to be taking on Denis Bondar, and this is going to be a flyweight fight. Denis Psycho Bondar, he's going to be making his UFC debut. He was scheduled quite a few times. I think he was scheduled 3 times. He was going to fight Ode Osborne. I think there was some visa issues there, and then he was going to fight Victor Rodriguez, got injured. He was linked to a fight with Malcolm Gordon in November, but it got rescheduled for this date. So the last time that Bondar has fought was August of 2020. It's been almost a year and a half at this point, or about a year and a half. And he's currently on a tear. He has won 10 fights in a row. If you look at the level of competition he's fought, definitely he still has a lot to prove. He's really not beaten a ton of good fighters. The best win he had was against Kevin Jocks, who was 7-1 at the time they fought, but now is a 7-4 fighter. He had a bit of a padded record. And Bondar's most recent win came against an 18-12 journeyman. That's probably the second biggest win of his career. In terms of his fighting style, he's a grappler. His in and out movement is pretty good. He has good feints, and he wants to pressure fighters to the fence, close the distance, and get the takedown. Not really a great striker. He goes forward and backwards in straight lines. Very linear guy, and he can hold his hands low. Doesn't check leg kicks. Can be a little bit hittable. I would say pressure fighters could give him a little bit of trouble. And Bondar will try to use the jab, pressure forward, or the check hook, mixing some overhands, and really just trying to use the striking as a distraction for the takedown. He's a good submission grappler. He will pressure his way into the takedown. He does a good job cutting guys off, getting them to the cage, and he has a good body lock, good double. On top, he's very aggressive, good ground and pound, good submission game. He likes rear naked chokes, arm triangles, and he sometimes likes to look for arm bars from the back. He does have 10 submission wins. Good cardio. He tries to push the pace. He has finished a lot of his fights early. He has 11 first-round finishes. One of his losses is a rear naked choke loss, and then he lost in a 5-round decision against Alexander Luga. And for Malcolm Gordon, he saved his job in the UFC. He picked up his first victory in the promotion. He defeated Francisco Figueiredo via decision. Previous to that, he had 2 bad performances. He lost to Amir Albazi via late first-round triangle choke, and then he was knocked out in 44 seconds against Suma Darji. Gordon, he can get the ball rolling if he can pull the upset, though, because that would be 2 upsets in a row. And he is a great athlete. He's a fast twitch fighter. He has good footwork, and he does a pretty good job of not getting backed up to the cage, controls the center well, and that's going to be pivotal in this fight. Gordon has to be ready to use his footwork, use his hand speed, and try to control the center a little bit, not get backed up. He has a good jab. He can switch stances. He likes to use those lead hooks, good straight punches, and he does a pretty good job of level changing and coming up with the uppercuts. He was trying to do that in his last fight. He has gotten a couple of nice knockouts with some switch stance attacks, but the issue in the stand-up is he doesn't like being hit. He has a weak chin, reacts really hard to feints. When fighters come forward with combinations, he has a tendency to just shell up, not really use footwork, and he's very defensive. When he gets hit, he usually can't really take the shots too well. I've seen him get dropped at fights. He's been knocked out 4 times. He is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's a good submission artist. He is dangerous everywhere the fight goes, on the ground, on top, or on bottom. He didn't do the best against a fighter with a similar style in Amir Albazi. I don't think that Bondar is quite as good as Albazi, but Bondar likes to pressure, and so does Albazi. Albazi pressured him, eventually got the takedown. And I would like to, I would stay out of Gordon's guard if I were any of his opponents, but I do think that if you could pass his guard, you could dominate him on the mat. In his last fight, he really relied on wrestling and grappling Gordon. He was able to get some takedowns. He was able to feint the takedown to set up his striking. In this fight with Bondar, I don't think that the wrestling is going to be respected by Bondar, and I don't think he's going to be able to hit the takedowns. Gordon, he does have a dangerous guard, like I said, so that's if he's in the guard, Bondar, he has to avoid the triangles, the arm bars, the Kimuras that Gordon is going to be throwing up. But Gordon, he doesn't have great wrestling technique. He isn't the best defensive wrestler, and even though he's dangerous off bottom, if he passes guard, he isn't as effective. And I just have to go with the aggression, the wrestling of Bondar here. Gordon has an outside chance to catch Bondar with a submission or a knockout early, but Bondar has never been finished by strikes. I think if he can get on top, he can go to work. He has finished all 14 of his wins, so I think that he's going to be able to get the submission or even TKO victory here via ground and pound. So give me Denise Bondar in this matchup here. And with this next fight, we got a welterweight fight. And when I first saw this matchup on paper, I was thinking, Phil Rowe probably has a pretty decent number there. Maybe I could bet it. But when you get into the fight, man, it becomes much more difficult to pick, in my opinion. Phil Rowe, Jason Witt, obviously they're welterweights. They're both coming off wins as well, so they have to be fairly confident coming in here. Witt, 2-2 so far in his 4 UFC fights. His first fight in the UFC could be forgiven a bit. He came in on very short notice, got knocked out quickly. He did respond with a big win against Cole Williams. He submitted him, but Cole Williams in that fight came out of shape, missed weight, hadn't fought in quite a while, and it was a very easy opponent there. And then after that, Jason Witt went in there against Matt Semmelsberger. Was not a good night for him once again. He got knocked out in less than a minute. And Witt's last fight was a big victory. He took out a perennial tough out in Bryan Barberina. It was a fight of the night war. He was able to show a little bit more of his toughness and durability. And for Phil Rowe, he lost his debut to Gabriel Green. It was a close decision loss, but returned in style, and he knocked out Orion Kosi in his second fight. He was able to show that he definitely is someone that, is dangerous and you can look into going forward. And he's an interesting fighter. He has a huge reach for the division. He's 6'3". He has an 80.5-inch reach. He's going to have a 10.5-inch reach advantage in this fight. And he has a unique blend of boxing and jiu-jitsu. Very long and fast, athletic. He has really good BJJ players to train with as well. He trains with guys like Jacare Ray, Adolfo Vieira. You even saw him recently competing in a jiu-jitsu match against Gordon Ryan. But in the stand-up, Phil Rowe mainly relies on his boxing. He has that really long reach. He throws some nice 1-2s. He does a good job of going to the body, then coming up to the head. He really loaded up with some huge hooks in his fight with Leon Shabazian to close the show, and he showed the same finishing instinct against Orion Kosi. And Rowe has some pretty good fakes and feints, good defense. He is cocky in there when he gets his timing and his distance, and that's where he can be pretty hard to deal with. He'll start to hold his hands low, pull counter you, and he can hit you flush with some nice jabs, some nice crosses. He has some decent front kicks and round kicks to the body. Not the biggest kicker. And one other thing about Phil Rowe is sometimes he can start fights a little bit slow. I feel like he can get clipped early. Seems like he can get taken down early and just not get turned on until, maybe the second or third round. And he's not a great wrestler. It seems like he gets taken down fairly easily, almost like he accepts the takedown. He does sometimes attack guillotine, and he's been able to get 2 guillotines, but obviously that does give up the takedown if you don't get the finish. And in the clinch, he is pretty good at using his height, controlling fighters, Rowe is, but he does like to play jiu-jitsu on his back. And in a fight with a guy like Jason Witt, you don't want to be playing jiu-jitsu off your back unless you're very confident that you're going to get a submission or sweep. And Phil Rowe is dangerous there. I mean, he could sweep you, he can submit you. When he gets on top, he's really good. He has big ground and pound, and he will look for the submission finish. So on the ground and on the feet, Phil Rowe is dangerous. But to me, it's like he sometimes has poor fight IQ or lapses in judgment, concentration, where he either has too much confidence on the ground, will pull guard, end up on his back and kind of give the round up, or he is a little bit lackadaisical on the feet, gets clipped, gets hurt, and he can kind of make things happen negative to himself, kind of self-inflicted problems, and that type of fighter to me is a little bit hard to trust. But Jason Witt to me is a little bit more he's obviously a lot more prototypical, but I feel like he's a little bit more of a guy that sticks to the game plan. He can't really... Phil Rowe is someone where if everything is going bad for him, he's getting dominated, he can pull it out of his ass, man. He can get that finish and, erase all the bad that happened previous. Jason Witt, he has better fight IQ. He fights to more of a game plan. And if he gets rolling, he can roll you over, but he doesn't have that ability to adjust or find a finish when he needs it, really. He's much more of a guy that just is a little bit more traditional. He's a boxer, wrestler. He is coming out of Glory MMA, and he comes in great shape. He breaks fighters with his pressure and his wrestling. That's basically his game. And he only needed 2 takedowns to get the submission win over Cole Williams. But against Bryan Battle, he got 8 takedowns. And he has good footwork and movement. His striking is really not great. Definitely vulnerable in the stand-up, but he has good movement. He will, bounce in and out, pull fighters into a single or double. And once he gets fighters a bit tired after taking them down, that's where he will go forward, pressure a bit more, try to use that big overhand right, the left hook. And he was able to actually drop Bryan Battle in his last fight with a left hook in an exchange. I don't really think he hurt him too bad, but kind of a flash knockdown, and it showed at least some evolution in his game. But Witt, will mix in some kicks. His kicks are not really set up. They're not very dangerous, and he just doesn't have a lot of head movement. He has a tendency to just sit in the pocket and trade hooks or overhands, and his hands are slow. He can hold his hands low as well. He can get hit coming in. His chin has not been very good. He's been finished by strikes 5 times in his career. And even like in his last fight, for instance, he got hurt very badly in the 3rd round. So seems like in a lot of his fights he does get clipped and gets hurt. But he has very good wrestling. His timing on his level changes is really excellent. And when he gets on top, he has good top control. He grinds guys out. Isn't the biggest finisher on the ground, but if he can break fighters with his pressure, kind of force them to give up, give their back, he can get the rear naked choke. 7 of his 8 wins are rear naked choke victories. His one other submission came via arm triangle against Cole Williams. Same kind of thing happened where he wore him out and Cole Williams kind of just gave in. Witt has awesome cardio, pushes a high pace. He definitely tries to weaponize his cardio. He's 7-0 in decisions. And this is a tricky fight because I do believe that Phil Rowe is the superior fighter. He has the better striking. He has better jiu-jitsu. He is more dangerous. He's the better athlete. He has the longer reach. He's taller. He's younger. But the issue is he has bad wrestling. He could be lackadaisical in his fights. He relies on his jiu-jitsu and trusts his jiu-jitsu on the ground. And if Rowe allows Jason Witt to pressure him, jam his punches and kicks, get him on his back, and Rowe accepts top position, he could lose this fight by decision. But when Rowe lets his hands go in space, he's really dangerous. He has good jiu-jitsu. And I'm just going to go with Phil Rowe to sometime over the course of the fight land a big shot and take Jason Witt out. Or just be able to maybe sweep him on the ground or catch him at a submission on the ground. I was thinking I was maybe going to bet Phil Rowe's money line, but after watching tape, I just don't have any interest in that. I feel like Jason Witt is a live underdog in this fight, but with his durability issues and my, sentiment on Phil Rowe being I do feel like he's a dangerous finisher, I just have to think that over the course of the fight, I see Phil Rowe kind of catching that finish at some point. So I am going to go with Phil Rowe. I'm going to say he gets the 2nd round knockout in this fight. And in this next fight here, we got Danilo Marques. He's going to be taking on Jailton Almeida. This is a battle of 2 jiu-jitsu black belts. And it looks like the UFC is trying to shine up their fresh new face that they just found in the Contender Series here in Jailton Almeida. He looks the part. He had an awesome performance against Nasruddinov. Finished him via 2nd round submission. And he's won 9 fights in a row. He was expecting to debut a bit earlier. He was going to fight on the Max Holloway card against Yair Rodriguez, but the fight was rescheduled. I don't exactly know why. It was against the same opponent, but Danilo Marques is going to be that guy that welcomes him to the UFC. And Marques is a 3-fight UFC veteran at this point. He has gotten 2 upsets in 3 UFC fights. He is a big underdog again here. His last fight, he faltered. He got knocked out in the 3rd round against Kennedy Njokuani. And this is a big fight for the 36-year-old Marques because a win will get him probably close to the top 15, but a loss is going to put him in this gatekeeper position for the rest of his career, most likely in the UFC. Both these fighters are imposing figures. Danilo Marques, he's 6'6", he's a skyscraper. Jailton Almeida, super long arms, he's absolutely ripped. And both these fighters, like I said, are BJJ black belts, so it should be fun if this fight hits the mat. It's tough to find a ton of footage on Almeida. I was able to find his fight from Thunder Fight 23 and his bout from the Contender Series. In both those fights, he looks like he comes in great shape. He's an explosive athlete. He's very fast. He moves well for being so big. He has some nice kicks. He could throw heavy leg kicks, round kicks, front kicks to the body. Haven't seen much of his boxing, but from the hands I have seen him throw, he seems a bit sloppy. Late in the first round against Nasruddinov, he did get clipped a couple times. He'll drop his hands when he throws kicks, and is a little bit stiff in the stand-up. In this fight against Danilo Marques, the speed advantage he has is probably going to make up for almost all of his striking deficiencies. I don't really see Marques giving him a ton of trouble in that area. But Jailton Almeida's main objective is to get fighters backed up to the fence, shoot in on him, get him to the ground. His takedown entries sometimes are not the greatest, but he's super strong, good chain wrestling against the cage. He has good body lock takedowns, nice double legs, and when he gets on top, he's methodical, very effective, crushing top pressure, good ground and pound, good job wrist riding opponents, working them over on the ground with big ground and pound punches. And he takes the back well. He has 9 submission wins. All of them are either rear naked chokes or arm triangles. In his last fight, he did fight a tough Russian grappler. He had some issues in that fight, but he was able to submit him ultimately. He did get reversed early going for a takedown. He was able to kind of quickly use the underhook to come back up and get the body lock and put Nasruddinov on his back, though. And the first round went back and forth a little bit. Almeida did end up getting reversed again, and Nasruddinov was actually able to land some decent ground and pound. But Almeida showed some decent stuff off his back. He was able to use a leg lock to make Nasruddinov give up the top position. And his athleticism and his strength is something that's going to be really tough for a lot of middleweight opponents to deal with. His cardio is still a bit of an unknown. He's only been to 1 decision and he lost. 10 of his wins have ended in the first round. In his last fight, he did have a back-and-forth grappling match. It was pretty grueling. He held up well, and he looks in incredible shape. I think he could probably go all 3 rounds pretty easily. And I feel like Almeida on the feet in this fight is going to have a pretty good advantage. And on the ground, I think he'll have an advantage as well, but it'll probably be a little bit closer. Danilo Marques has really little striking to be concerned with. He's slow. He just not really let his hands go too much. Stays defensive on the feet, picks his spots, and tries to time the takedown. Really just tries to use the overhand or straight punches to close the gap. Some low kicks. There's not really much of a knockout threat there with Marques at all. And Danilo Marques, he is a black belt, comes in shape, his wrestling is good. He likes to get the more single leg takedowns, whereas Almeida's more body lock. But he does a good job using the single to take the back, Marques. And both these fighters like to attack the back, but I think Almeida is a better finisher from the back mount. Marques, he does come in good shape. He can wrestle, but he did slow down in the 3rd round of his last fight. And I think that his cardio is not going to be a huge factor in pushing the pace in this fight because Almeida is just too much of an athlete, in my opinion, for Marques to be able to push the pace unless he can put him on his back, which I don't see happening. And I did watch a jiu-jitsu match that was recent from Danilo Marques where he faced off against Gabriel Checo, and it made me think that Almeida, if he gets the back with time to work, is going to find the submission. I feel like his submission defense looked good, but it wasn't elite. It wasn't elite level, in my opinion. I feel like Almeida is a level above on the ground as well. Good boxers with solid movement, footwork, takedown defense are going to cause issues to Almeida. But I don't think Almeida's going to have to deal with much on the feet in this fight. I think he's going to have the edge on the mat as well. And I think he's probably going to go in there and get the finish. So I'm going to go with Almeida via rear naked choke in this fight, either in the 1st or 2nd round. So moving along here, now we got a women's fight taking place here with Alexis Davis taking on Julija Stoliarenko. And Alexis Davis, she's one of the most experienced female fighters in the history of women's MMA at this point. But recently things have not been going well for her. She's 1-4 in her last 5 fights. 3 of those fights were at flyweight. She decided to move back up to bantamweight in 2021 and was able to get the win. She beat Sabina Mazo in her return fight to the division, but couldn't put 2 together. She lost to Pani Kianzad in her last fight, and she's 37 years old, so I doubt she's going to be trying to make another title run. But at 135, I do think she's competitive. She could probably beat some girls in the division. And in this fight, she is a pretty solid favorite against the relatively inexperienced Julija Stoliarenko. Julija Stoliarenko is in desperate need of a win. She lost her first 2 UFC fights. She did have some success on the regional scene. She was able to win the Invicta FC title. She became the world Lethweight champion. But she hasn't had an easy road in the UFC whatsoever. I mean, for her first bout, they threw her in there with the top 10 girl in Yana Kunitskaya, lost via decision in that fight, Stoliarenko. And then they put her in there with another beast, another top 15 fighter in Julia Avila. And she got submitted by Runica Choke in the 3rd round of that fight. It was a more competitive bout. And now the UFC has her fighting one of the better bantamweights in the history of women's MMA, Alexis Davis. So they obviously think that Julija Stoliarenko is a good fighter. And she's a super tough girl. She, like I said, is a former Lethweight champion, which is bare knuckle MMA with elbows. Or it's I'm not 100% sure exactly what it is. I think that's what it is, with headbutts as well. It's kind of crazy. But she has no problem brawling, getting bloody, down and dirty. And she is not a very good striker. I mean, the main weapon she likes to look for, the overhand right, her left hook, and the rear leg high kick. On the inside, she does throw elbows. She is durable and she has good cardio. She tries to force wars and exchanges. Her last fight was pretty fun to watch because she sat in the center and gave and took against Julia Avila in a back and forth fight. Stoliarenko, she has decent offensive firepower but not huge power. Against a fighter like Avila, she was not able to have that same type of offense in the exchanges. Avila's a very powerful girl. This fight, I feel like power-wise, it's going to be much more even with her and Davis. Defensively, Stoliarenko, she stands tall. She doesn't move her head much, so she is there to be hit. And she's a dangerous submission grappler. She's more of a guard pooler. She doesn't really have great wrestling. But she'll jump guillotine. She'll try to pull guard, throw up arm bars, roll for leg locks. In her fight with Yana Kunitskaya, she could not deal with the physicality of Kunitskaya. Yana used her size, put her in the clinch, and basically just shut everything down. She was able to control Stoliarenko, land some small punches, knees, and kind of get the win by stalling out the fight. Kunitskaya didn't seem worried about getting the fight to the ground. She did get it into get the takedown late in round 2. She controlled Stoliarenko a bit, but even then, Stoliarenko threatened her with an armbar, and it didn't seem like, Kunitskaya was able to do much on the ground. She seemed defensive on the ground, and she more wanted to just stay in the clinch in that fight more often. And Stoliarenko was able to hit a double leg on Avila. She was able to do a better job of forcing grappling. She got some clinch control in that fight. And she's definitely going to test girls. She's dangerous on the mat. She's willing to brawl on the feet. She throws elbows on the inside. And I wouldn't be too shocked to see Alexis Davis wearing a crimson mask if this fight ends up a brawl. Stoliarenko is going to have to keep Alexis Davis off her. Davis, she's a long-time black belt, and she's only been submitted one time in 31 fights, so she might have the expectancy that if Stoliarenko pulls guard, she'll just get on top of her and ride her out for the remainder of the fight. Davis will look to get on top and try to pass the guard, and if she can pass her guard, I do think that she could control Stoliarenko on the mat pretty easily. I just don't know if she's going to be able to take down Stoliarenko or even come in with a takedown game plan. She usually does not. I feel like Davis will be the girl controlling the clinch if it goes there. But I was impressed with Stoliarenko's improvements after that Yana fight. She did a good job of controlling Julia Avila in the clinch, and Julia Avila is a strong girl. In the 3rd round, though, Avila was able to get on top, get heavy in half guard, and kind of beat up Stoliarenko and eventually got the rear naked choke submission late in the fight. But, on the feet, I think Alexis Davis is pretty similar to Stoliarenko. She likes to wait for fighters to get on the inside. She likes to brawl. She has good leg kicks. She'll try to land that body kick. She'll, throw some decent 1-2s. Maybe she has a bit better technique, but I don't think it's a huge difference. I think that Julija is a little bit more dangerous on the inside because she likes to throw those elbows. And I think at this point, Stoliarenko has the speed advantage. Alexis is a beast on the ground. I mean, she has average to below average takedown offense and defense. But if she gets into the ground, she has a great sweep game, really good submission game off of her back. If she can get on top, she has really good top control. Her fight IQ sometimes doesn't always show up the best, even though she's a big veteran. And in this fight, I feel like it should be lying closer, so I'm going to go with Julija Stoliarenko. I think both these girls are going to brawl, get bloody. I think Stoliarenko will be a little faster, more vibrant. If it's going to be a fight IQ fight, you know, if Stoliarenko pushes the grappling too much and gets in the clinch, pulls guard, she could cost herself this fight by letting Davis coast to the top control. But I think if she keeps it standing, she has a good chance to win with her speed and her variation of shots. Both girls have good cardio. I think this could be a fun fight. I think it could be a back and forth fight. And I'm just going to go with the upset here. I know a lot of people are probably pretty confident on Davis. She has become a lot more significant favorite than she was earlier in the week. But I'm going to go the other way here. I'm going to go with Julija Stoliarenko to get this one done via decision. So up next here we got a middleweight fight. It's Marc Andre-Barriault taking on Chidi Njokuani. And both these middleweights coming in this fight with some momentum. Marc Andre-Barriault, he is the UFC veteran. He's going to be welcoming Chidi Njokuani to the UFC. And Barriault, he's teamed up with Sanford MMA. His last fight was arguably his best performance. He took out a credible fighter in Dalcha Lungiambula, who's been a champion in other divisions. That made it 2 wins in a row for Barriault. It actually is 3 wins in a row for him, but his knockout win against Oscar Pichotto was changed to a no contest due to Barriault failing for PEDs. Barriault finished both Pichotto and Azatar with strikes prior to the decision in Lungiambula. He's posted some pictures on Instagram, and it looks like he's really close to making weight. Looks in great shape for this fight. Definitely seems like he's ready to go. And his opponent, Chidi Njokuani, he's going to be making his UFC debut here. But in my opinion, he's actually the more experienced fighter. He has 10 more pro fights than Barriault does. Comes from a fighting family. He's been striking for a long time and definitely should be ready for the moment. He's already been on some big shows. He's main evented a Bellator show, fought in the Contender Series, and he's been in there with some of the best fighters outside the UFC as well as former and current UFC fighters. He's fought guys like Rafael Carvalho, former Bellator World Champion John Salter, former Bellator World Title Challenger Andrei Koreshkov, Bellator Champ. He fought Melvin Gillard. He fought Andre Fiallo. He fought Ricky Rainey. He's fought Max Griffin, Jeremy Kimball, Brandon Thatch, Al Juban. He has a lot of high-level experience, and even though he's had mixed results in those fights, he's won 2 fights in a row, and now he's looking to make a splash in the UFC. And I think that this is a close fight. I feel like Chidi Njokuani is definitely the better striker on the feet. I mean, the guy does a good job of using his Muay Thai. He comes forward. He likes to pressure fighters, but he also can use his long-range attacks. He has a good reach and throws some nice kicks from the outside, some good long strikes. He is pretty effective. I mean, when he can use his footwork and kind of snipe guys, which is what he's going to be trying to do in this fight, use his speed, he can land some nice big punches. But one thing I have noticed from Chidi is he struggles against fighters that have pressure game plans against him. He does end up getting into the clinch a lot, and he has a pretty good Muay Thai clinch, but I do think that Barriault is going to be significantly bigger and stronger than him. I think he's going to be able to control that clinch effectively. Not bigger maybe, but just more physical. And, I think that Barriault is going to have the cardio edge. I think that's going to be the difference in the fight. Barriault's good at walking fighters down, cutting the cage off. His defense is tight. He is very durable. He's never been finished. And he pushed a crazy pace, man. He's going to have a good game plan. I expect him to pressure, look to clinch, dirty box, eventually get the takedowns. Barriault isn't the best wrestler, but he's good at clinching, pressuring against the cage, working on the inside. And if he does that against Njokuani, I think Chidi's going to get tired, and I think Marc's going to start to take over the fight. Njokuani was able to win his last 2 fights, but they were against opponents I don't really feel are that good. In this fight, he's taking a step up again, and I think Barriault is the mentally tougher guy if it becomes a dogfight. I've seen some quit Njokuani in previous fights. Barriault's not going to stop. I think Barriault may struggle a bit early in the fight to close the distance. Chidi may land some nice shots on him, but I think once he starts to slow down, it's the small cage in there. I think that we're going to see Barriault start to take over the fight with his clinch game, with his dirty boxing, with his strikes coming in, closing the distance. I think he's going to start to make Chidi a lot more hittable as he gets fatigued. And I actually do think that he's going to be able to get a finish in this fight, either in the second or third round with ground and pound or just big strikes against the cage. I just think that Barriault's going to dog him out in this one. And in the next fight, we got Hakeem Dawodu. He's going to be taking on Mike Trizano. Probably the highest level fight on the card so far in terms of just the overall skill level of both fighters. Both these guys are just outside the top 15. Dawodu is coming off a loss to Movsar Evloev. Prior to that, he had won 5 fights in a row in the UFC. Mike Trizano, he was the winner of the 27th season of The Ultimate Fighter. He's now 3-1 in the UFC. He's coming off a upset victory over Ludovit Klein and kind of re-announced himself in the division because prior to that, he had taken 2 years away from the sport after his loss to Grant Dawson. And Trizano, he was going to fight Chaz Skelly in October, but Skelly was forced to withdraw, and he didn't get rebooked until 4 months later for some reason. So it's been a little while since he's fought once again. He hasn't fought since May of 2021. And if you look at the level of opponents that Trizano has faced in terms of in comparison to Dawodu, he definitely has faced lower level opposition, and that is why Hakeem Dawodu is the slight favorite in this fight. But Mike Trizano, he's a technical striker. He's a bit slow, but he has heavy leg kicks. He has good boxing. He likes to use his leg kicks early on in fights to slow fighters down and then pressure and get his hands going. Trizano, he has an excellent jab. He has nice 1-2s. He does a good job of attacking the body, and he works on fighters' gas tanks over 3 rounds. When fighters overextend or get in the pocket with him, he does a good job letting off nice hooks. He has fluid hands, decent combinations. He isn't a big power puncher, but he has good technique and he throws a good amount of volume. He's durable. His last fight, he was able to get the victory in a close fight, really solely on forward pressure and throwing more volume than Klein did. Trizano, he has 2 knockout wins, so he's not going to knock out opponents most likely. And he's never been finished by strikes, so that just goes to show his durability once again. And he is an average grappler. Takedown defense against the cage is pretty solid, but he has been taken down in multiple fights. He can be controlled against the feds as well. He will jump guillotine. He has a nasty guillotine, but it's put him on his back in previous fights. In his fight with Joe Giannetti, kind of a scramble fest type of fight where Giannetti was able to get some takedowns, but went for leg locks and went for low percentage submissions that put him on his back in 50-50 positions, and Trizano was just a little bit more active with the strikes. Trizano did give his back against Grant Dawson. He got submitted with the rear naked choke, gave his back against Luis Pena, so has a little bit of an issue giving his back. Hakeem Dawodu, he kind of has a similar striking style. He's more Muay Thai based, but he has a good jab. He likes to use the 1-2, jab, right hook to the body, and he really likes to attack with the body shots too. He does throw more kicks than Trizano. He'll throw front kicks, round kicks to the body. In this fight, I think you should try to mix in some leg kicks because Trizano has struggled with that in the past. And I've seen a fight of his against Austin Arnett, Dawodu, where he did a really good job with the low kicks. Sometimes Dawodu can be a little bit flat-footed, and his head movement cannot be the greatest. So he can get clipped. He got knocked out in one of his, or got dropped and submitted against Danny Henry in one of his UFC fights. But I feel like he has the speed edge in this fight. He's pretty quick, and he probably has the power advantage as well. He has 6 knockouts in his 12 wins. And he's a good athlete. He's a good grappler. He's strong in the clinch, and I feel like in the clinch is where he could potentially have a small advantage in this fight. And when he wants to, he will, get double legs and body locks. On top, he isn't the greatest. His takedown defense has improved a lot, but obviously against elite level guys like his last fight with Movsar Evloev, he still can be taken down and grinded out, but showed good cardio in that one. He was able to win the 3rd round after getting grinded on the first 2. And, I do feel like in this fight it's pretty close. I think Dawodu is the faster puncher and he kicks harder, but Trizano's the better boxer, probably a little bit more active. Dawodu needs to throw heavy counters in this fight and make Trizano pay for coming into range. I would like to see him utilize the leg kicks and utilize the clinch, maybe some late takedowns. I think he's a physically stronger fighter, and I'm going to go with Dawodu to win a decision in this fight. We got another bantamweight fight here. We got Miles Johns taking on John Castaneda in this one. 2 prospects. They're trying to kind of survive that gauntlet, which is the UFC's bantamweight division. They're both coming off knockout wins, and Miles Johns actually has 2 KO victories back-to-back. Miles Johns is a 3-1 guy in the UFC here. He's almost 3-1 favorite on the money line as well. And he trains out of Fortis May. Some people still have high hopes for him. John Castaneda, he's 1-1 so far in his 2 UFC fights. Had 2 hard matchups with Nathaniel Wood and Eddie Wineland. The Nathaniel Wood fight, he came in on short notice, and he was fairly competitive, but Wood clearly won by decision. And then in his next fight, Castaneda was able to get a nasty knockout win over Eddie Wineland. And he's been shelved since that fight, which was in February, so it's going to be around a year since the last time he's fought. He was scheduled to fight Ronnie Lawrence in July, but Ronnie Lawrence was forced to withdraw, I believe, or I can't remember who was forced to withdraw. I think it was actually Castaneda, and then Lawrence struggled with the weight cut. I'm pretty sure both of them didn't fight, and they ended up having like Kevin Kroom fight some other guy. It was like a weird situation, but yeah, Castaneda, he is a well-rounded fighter on the feet. He's loose. He has good footwork, movement, good speed. He's tricky. Switches stances a lot. Good switch stance attacks. He likes to throw some nice low kicks, get guys thinking that he's going to throw low and then fake low, go high. He is defensively solid as well. Good job feigning. He keeps his hands high in range. He does like to drop his hands when he's out of range and then shoot in with that switch stance cross or, fake the cross, come with the level change, and he likes to kind of try to mix it up. And he's at his best when he can pressure, get in the pocket, pick and pull, look for counter 3-2s. He has good reflexes. He has fast hands. And he has good timing and accuracy. Even though he doesn't throw many combinations, he has nice power in his hands when he lets them go. And he was cracking Eddie Wineland with nice counter left hooks. And when he hurt Eddie Wineland, he did unload with some nice shots. He has killer instinct. He has 8 knockout wins. And he doesn't have a lot of volume, so when fights go to decision, he does tend to be in some close fights. And he's actually lost his last 3 decisions in a row, so that's something that I don't really like. Only 5-4 in decisions overall. He kind of has the same tendency I noticed as Miguel Cotto, the boxer, where like after he lands a combination, he likes to kind of skip backwards out of range, and he can't be offensive when he's doing that. So fighters have to pressure Castaneda and try to not give him that rest time. Maybe land on him when he's out of position. Fighters like Levy Marquine had success doing that against Castaneda, pressuring him, landing big punches, clinching him against the cage. Nathaniel Wood also had success with his pressure, clinch control, and his leg kicks. His jab was effective, which Miles Johns definitely is going to try to use here. And Castaneda tends to tire a bit when he's pressured. He can, rely on his takedown game. And he does have a good chin. He doesn't get hit flush too often. But he has been finished by strikes in 2014. That was the only time he's ever been finished with punches. Castaneda is a good offensive wrestler, though. He has good timing on his level changes. He shoots in quickly. He has decent takedowns when he can back his opponents to the cage. And he has pretty good takedown defense. I've seen him take it down, but his get-up game and his scrambling ability is really good. I don't really see Miles Johns being able to hold Castaneda down. Castaneda isn't a big submission threat, but he has 3 submissions, 2 arm triangles, so 5 submissions in his career. And he doesn't have the best cardio. That's why he doesn't pressure the entire fights. In some of his fights, he takes a lot of breaks. He can get a little bit tired in the later rounds, but Miles Johns isn't a guy that pushes a high pace or has a big gas take himself. Miles Johns, he's much more stationary, kind of traditional fighter, but he's explosive. He's a tank for the division. Likes to inch forward into range behind a high guard, work his jab. Great jab. He has one of the best jabs in the division. Likes to look for that lead left hook. He has shown some really nice power in his right hand in his last 2 fights. He knocked out Kevin Natividad with an uppercut off the clinch break. And that fight, though, I do have to say, he did kind of cheat. I mean, he grabbed the gloves, but fair play to him. The ref didn't see it. And then he was able to knock out Anderson Dos Santos with the overhand right. In his last fight, I saw him use more leg kicks than I had previously, and that was a good thing to implement into his game. If I was Castaneda in this fight, I would definitely try to rip the body against Miles Johns, which he doesn't protect his body too well. And he's a guy that is just kind of comes forward, comes backward in straight lines. He isn't super great defensively, so he's definitely a little bit hittable as well. Can be kind of plotty, could struggle to close the distance if guys don't sit in the pocket with him. He is strong for the division. He's a former college wrestler. He's very good at feigning the level change and is constantly feigning the level change to disguise when he's actually going to close the gap and shoot the double. And he does a good job getting fighters thinking it's a striking match and shooting in or the single or the double. Did that effectively to Adrian Yanez and got some takedowns on him. And when he gets the fight to the ground, he's not the best with his top control. Guys can't get back up to his feet. He doesn't really have a great submission game. Just kind of tries to hold fighters down, stall out the fight, and run down the clock. Fighters who could scramble and are hard to hold down are usually going to be able to get back to their feet against Miles Johns. And in this fight, I'm going to go with the underdog here. I feel like the line is off as well. I feel like Miles Johns is way too big of a favorite. You know, he has a wrestling advantage on paper, but in terms of MMA wrestling, I do think Castaneda could get takedowns on Johns as well, especially if Johns gets a little bit tired. And if Castaneda puts Johns on his back, I think he's going to be much more effective controlling Johns, holding him down. I think if Miles Johns gets takedowns on John Castaneda, he's not going to have much success controlling him on the mat. I think Castaneda will be able to get back up to his feet, get right back in his face. Castaneda has to come in a little bit better shape, be a little bit more offensive, pressure a little bit more, use that in and out movement to back up Miles Johns, not stay in the pocket with him, kind of try to back him up, control the center, land your shots, get in, get out, frustrate him, and then walk him into some bigger punches or bigger shots. And I do think Castaneda can implement that game plan. So due to that, I am going to go with John Castaneda here to pull the upset. And now we're getting into the main card. We got Julian Juicy J Erosa taking on Steven Ocho Peterson. This should be the fight of the night, man. Two action guys, two guys that bring it every single time they're out there. And these guys go in killer be killed style, and it should be a good one. I mean, Julian Erosa is a huge favorite, minus 300. Usually when you see Julian Erosa, he's the underdog. So seeing that, right away, I just kind of want to pass on the fight in terms of the betting-wise. But, I do lean towards Julian Erosa. I mean, you see Steven Peterson, and what I think he's going to try to do in this fight is wrestle, because on the feet, he just is at a range disadvantage. He has less weapons. He has good leg kicks. He'll throw some body kicks, and really just likes to work the hands. His hands are not that great either. Just kind of like a hard-nosed guy that can take damage, can kind of counter with, get hit in return or block in return with some punches, and then work the takedowns. And if you get tired, he can start to dog you out. And very durable, pretty good submission game, and he has decent wrestling. With the Erosa, he's a guy that has improved his submission defense and his takedown defense quite a bit. His grappling is up to notch, and he's been able to pressure more, be more offensive, open up with the striking due to that. Very offensive guy. He throws wild high kicks. He'll throw flying knees. He has some pretty good straight punches. His striking is definitely pretty good offensively. He does have a bit of a chin issue, but Erosa won't have to worry too much against Peterson, who's not really a power guy. I don't think there's too much of a knockout threat there. Peterson, I think, is going to try to hold Erosa on the ground, but Erosa has proven against guys like Grant Dawson, which was a short notice fight, and in some other of his recent fights, that if you take him down, he does a great job working a submission game to get back up to his feet or to get the submission. Good dark choke finishes. He's been able to get some upset submission wins over some good prospects like Charles Jourdain and Sean Woodson with that dark choke in the third round. Both these guys have great cardio, so Peterson isn't going to be able to break Erosa with his cardio or his pressure. And Erosa is a finisher in most of his fights, but Peterson's a guy that is just so hard to get out of there, man. He's just super durable. So I don't really see Erosa getting the knockout or the submission. So I'm going to actually go with Erosa by decision. One line I do think could potentially be decent value is Erosa by submission. If Peterson shoots a lot, maybe Erosa will eventually catch him. But I'm going to say Erosa decisions him in this fight. In this next fight, I'm excited for this one. I mean, Bryan Battle, he's always going to be known as the Tough 29 season winner, but the real fans know that the title was disputed, and the title is on the line tonight, or on Saturday night, with Tresean Gore taking on Bryan Battle. Tresean Gore went 2-0 on Tough 29. He knocked out Gilbert Urbina. He decisioned Ryder Newman. Suffered a knee injury. It forced him out of the fight on the finale against Bryan Battle, but never late than never. I mean, the matchmakers have decided to put them back together here, and this is going to be Gore's official UFC debut. Battle, he won via rear naked choke on the finale show in his debut and was able to get his first UFC win. So if he beats Gore, that's going to be 2-0 for him. Both these guys are still very young in their careers. Battle, he has 7 fights. Gore, he's only 3-0. And he did have the 2 exhibition fights, so did Bryan Battle on the show, so that's an extra 2 fights for both of them. And, Battle, he did have 11 amateur fights, I believe. So he has quite an advantage in terms of overall fights. He has 19 pro MMA bouts. Gore in total only has 9 amateur fights, amateur and pro, including the Ultimate Fighter. Both fighters have faced pretty good competition. As an amateur, Tresean Gore, he took on Tanner Saraceno, who's a LFA fighter. He's fought on some decent promotions, and he took out Robert Hale, who's another good fighter. He beat Ryder Newman on the Tough Show, who's a good amateur wrestler who trains at Extreme Couture. Got the knockout over Gilbert Urbina, who is the same fighter that Bryan Battle beat in his last fight. And Bryan Battle, he was able to get amateur victories over fighters such as Impa Kasangane, Cody Brundage, 2 guys that made it to the UFC. And as a pro, Battle has beaten Cameron Lachinov, who's an experienced Bellator veteran. He beat Andre Petrosky, who's now 2-0 in the UFC. So both of them have done well and proven themselves, even though they're relatively inexperienced. Tresean Gore is a great athlete. He's a technical fighter, very explosive. He switches stances. He has good footwork. On the feet, he's a really good kicker. Heavy leg kicks, nice rear leg high kick, heavy hands. His last fight, he dropped Urbina multiple times, including with a jab. Big power in his left hook. Good straight and overhand right. Doesn't throw a lot of combinations. He can be low volume, but he will let his hands go wicked backfires to the cage. He has good counters, and you have to respect his power. He is not a super active offensive wrestler, but he has pretty good wrestling. He has a good double leg. His submission game is good. In a fight I watched of his where he fought LJ Jones, he had a really good back take, almost got the rear naked choke. He threw up some submissions from his back. In this fight with Bryan Battle, I think he wants to more keep it on the feet and box. Battle is a load on the mat. He's very good in scrambles. If he can get on top of Tresean Gore, I think that's where Battle's going to have his most success. Tresean Gore still does not have a lot of experience in long fights. He has 2 first-round finishes out of his 3 pro debuts, or 3 pro wins, and he did go to a split decision in his pro debut. So he did go 2 rounds with Ryder Newman as well, I would say, I guess. And as an amateur, Gore went 1-1 in decisions. One of those decision wins was also a split decision. For his opponent, Bryan Battle, he's a dog, man. He's going to have to use that in this bout. He's not as technical a fighter as Tresean Gore, but the guy's really big for the weight class. He has a 4.5-inch reach advantage. He can take a shot and keep coming, and he pushes the pace. And Battle can pick at fighters on the outside with kicks. He has some power kicks to the body, to the head. Pretty fluid, athletic fighter. He has a good jab. Sometimes you'll come with a jab too, or jab overhand right. His hands are a bit sloppy. Isn't really the greatest puncher, I would say. But he can use his reach to blitz forward. He has good straight punches. He'll get guys against the cage and clinch them. And if he can get in a clinch, he uses his height really well there, really good knees. He was able to cut open Andre Petrosky with the knee to the head in the clinch. Not the best defensively. He stands tall. He doesn't move his head. Doesn't really set his kicks up the best. Can just be sloppy with his hands. And he tries to overwhelm guys with volume. Doesn't really have the greatest technique. You saw that defense almost bit him in the ass in his last fight. He got hit with some big punches early against Gilbert Urbina. Was stunned. Got taken down a couple times. Definitely got off to a rough start. But he showed his toughness once again. And he's not too much of a threat to get the knockout on the feet. He has a chance to maybe land that flush high kick or a big knee in the clinch, but he only has 1 career knockout, and he's an alright wrestler. He has good body locks, and on top he's active with his ground and pound, good submission game. I have seen him submitted with an armbar from inside someone's guard, so he has to be aware of the threat on the ground from the guard of Tresean Gore. Battle, he has good defensive grappling. His takedown defense is good. He has good front chokes. He is able to tire out wrestlers and then finish them. He did that to Andre Petrosky. He lost the first round, but then submitted him in the second round. And he showed good composure in bad positions on the ground against Petrosky in the first round. He got mounted, got his back taken. He was totally flattened out. And Battle has good get-ups against the cage. He makes it tough for guys to hold him down. Really great durability and cardio. And this is a fight, in my opinion, that it's tough to go against Tresean Gore, but Battle is definitely going to make Gore work for it. Tresean Gore is better technically on the feet and on the ground. Wrestling, it's probably pretty close, but I don't think either fighter is going to have a massive advantage. It's going to be key in this fight that Gore keeps it on the feet. If he can't get the knockout in the first round, he's going to have to be able to keep up with that pressure, pace, clinch game, grappling of Battle, and try to maybe just pot shot Battle and make the fight slow a little bit, because Battle has that gas tank, man. He's going to want to try to make it just a complete dogfight. And he has to be ready to pack a lunch against Bryan Battle. But I'm going to pick Gore by decision in this fight. I think he's going to dominate early, maybe get a knockdown or two, and then get a little bit tired and let Battle get back into the fight. But I think the damage that he's done on Battle is going to make Battle a little bit, even though his gas tank is amazing, it's going to kind of slow him down a little bit, make him a little bit less dangerous. And I think even though down the stretch Gore might be a little bit tired and Battle is putting it on him, I think that Gore is going to have enough to see that final bell, get to the decision, and not lose like a 10-8, not get dominated, and go win the decision 29-28. So for me, I'm going to go with Tresean Gore. This is a really fun fight. I kind of almost wish they didn't put these two guys together, but I get it. I mean, they kind of want to get a official winner or the best guy out of that show. But both these guys are prospects that I think could win some fights in the UFC, and should be fun to see them continue to progress in their careers. But going to go with Tresean Gore in this matchup. And personally, this is my favorite fight on the card. We got Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Carlston Harris. Shavkat Rakhmonov and Harris are two of the best prospects in the welterweight division. Should be a really fun fight. Arguably the best fight on the card, in my opinion. And Rakhmonov, he's a big favorite. He's undefeated, 14-0. Ran through guys like Michel Prazeres, Alex Oliveira in his first two UFC fights. Submitted both of them. And to not be outdone, his opponent Carlston Harris has gotten two finishes in his first two UFC bouts. He debuted against Christian Aguilera and was very impressive. He put him to sleep with the Anaconda choke. Followed that up with a nasty knockout finish over Impa Kasanganay. And Harris, while not being undefeated, has a really stellar record of 17-4, 5 wins in a row. And out of the two fighters, I would say Harris has fought the more higher level opponents outside the UFC. He's beaten guys like Wellington Turman, Michel Pereira, Joyton Luderbach. Shavkat has also fought some recognizable fighters. He was able to get the win over Jung Young Park. He beat Thiago Verjao. The winner of this fight is going to go get a big push. So a win is crucial for both fighters. Harris, being 33 years old, is in a much more pivotal spot to get the win. But Carlston Harris, yes, one of the toughest styles to beat in MMA. He's an athletic, lanky grappler, super fast. He's a good mover. He's a fighter that likes to be all the way in or all the way out. On the feet, he isn't the most technical. Mainly likes to work some front kicks, round kicks from the outside, counter with a straight right hand. But his last fight, he looked a little bit better in the pocket. He was countering and returning, looked a little bit more comfortable, was letting go of some big hooks, and he knocked out Kasanganay pretty ruthlessly with some counter hooks. Most of the time, Harris gets his finishes, they're on the mat, but he does have some power. He showed it in both of his UFC fights. He has some power in that right hand. In most of his fights, he's been able to use his wrestling and counter-striking style to stay safe and get the win, but has been knocked out one time. He does get wide and out of position on his punches sometimes. He can throw naked kicks. His level changes can be countered with uppercuts. And in the pocket, it seems like he is a little bit wild, not really comfortable. His defense isn't the best. So there are ways to get to him in the stand-up. But Harris is super aggressive with his wrestling. He'll shoot in or a single or a double, and he has long arms, so he can move up into the body lock. And he's really good at finishing the takedowns from the body lock position. On top, he has good pressure. His top control is really good. He controls the clinch, gets the cage well. Good job just hanging on opponents from standing and not letting them get completely free, tiring them out. And I've seen him, attack front chokes very effectively. Good anacondas, good darces. 2 of his last 3 wins are anaconda choke victories. And I haven't seen his defensive wrestling or him put on his back too much. I don't really know what he will do off bottom, but he is a pro belt in jiu-jitsu, so he should be, calm and ready to go if he gets taken down. He has good cardio. I've seen him in 5-round fights before, 7-3 in decisions, 7-1 in his last 8 decisions. So Harris recently has done really well in fights at the scorecard. His opponent, Shavkat Rakhmonov, fun fighter to watch. On the feet, he's a pressure fighter, a good striker, stands tall, and he is a little bit flat-footed, but he stays very balanced. He has great positioning, good footwork. He slides in and out of range well, does a good job pressuring, feinting, and then slipping and countering with really tight hooks. He has good upper body movement. He has fast hands, good jab. His right cross is fast, sharp. He'll switch stances. He cuts the cage off really well. Nice kicks, good leg kicks, good front kicks to the body. Due to standing tall and being flat-footed, fast and explosive fighters can close the distance and lay clean on Rakhmonov. I've seen Rakhmonov dropped in fights in the past, and he just sometimes can be a little bit plotty and slow, kind of going into range a little bit too like standing a little bit too tall and a little bit too nonchalant, and that's where he gets clipped and hurt. But he has some big power. He's hurt multiple guys on the feet. His clinch game is really dangerous. Great dirty boxing, really nice elbows. His knees are nasty. Good throws, good judo takedowns. He shoots the double. And when he gets on top, he has some heavy ground and pound, really heavy hands. His submission game is solid. He has a few submissions. And due to Rakhmonov liking the pressure, being flat-footed and standing tall, he can be taken down and can be clinched. His takedown defense has improved, and it's pretty solid, but I've seen him taken down in several of his previous fights, and he is nasty off his back. He has a good submission game. He will try to use his submissions to sweep top position or get the finish. Really nice guillotine. He was able to catch Alex Oliveira in that guillotine in his UFC debut. And his cardio is really good. Even though he's never been in decision, I've seen him get dropped and come back and get a third-round knockout. He has shown ability to continue to push the pace after letting a lot of offense go. And he's finished all of his other pro bouts in the first 2 rounds. He's only been in the third round 1 time, never been in a decision. And he's undefeated, but he did lose 2 fights as an amateur to the same opponent where he was taken down and grinded out, lost the decision in those fights. He has been taken down in many fights in his career, like I said. And this fight to me is much closer than the line indicates. I would say it's more of a 50-50 fight. I don't really get why it's so wide. Harris is not as technical on the feet, but he's a mover. He's faster. He's more mobile. He's going to be looking to take advantage of the upright stance of Rakhmonov with straight rights, overhand rights. He definitely has speed, and he has the chance to connect and hurt Rakhmonov in close range exchanges. I think Rakhmonov is a little bit better, but Harris is definitely improving in that aspect. Showed it in his last fight. And when you pressure Harris, you have to give up the threat of the level change and the body lock. And I could see Harris taken down and beating Rakhmonov that way also with the wrestling. If he gets on top, he's going to have to show off those new purple belt skills. He recently just got promoted, and try to stay out of Rakhmonov's guard. If you end up there, use your submission defense and try to pass his guard. If he can get on top of Harris, Rakhmonov that is, I haven't really seen how Harris is off his back, so that could be a dangerous position. I don't really see this fight going to decision, and I actually think Carlston Harris is going to go out there and clip him in the first round. I'm going to go with Harris by first round knockout in this fight. It's a fun fight, but I'm just going to go with the guy that I think is the value side here. And why this is the co-main event over all the other fights on the card, I really don't know, but we got Punahele Soriano taking on Nick Maximov here. 2 West Coast middleweight prospects, and we're going to see who the better man is on Saturday night. Punahele Soriano, he was 8-0 previous to his last bout. Suffered a decision loss to Brennan Allen. That was around 6 months ago. He's a powerhouse Hawaiian. He's coming out of Extreme Couture. Big power. He's finished 7 of his 8 wins. Nick Maximov, he's a Nick Diaz Academy fighter. He's already made a name for himself in the jiu-jitsu world. As far as MMA goes, he's still unproven. His first 5 opponents had a combined record of 2 wins and 14 losses. And he took a big step up, and he faced off with Oscar Cota on the Contender Series, who was 11-2. Also went up 2 weight classes for that fight, fought a heavyweight fight, but Cota also wasn't a very high-level opponent, even though his record in comparison to the other 5 opponents Maximov fought, he was high-level, but not in comparison to a guy like Soriano. In Maximov's UFC debut, he did face off with another young prospect in Cody Brundage, took the decision win over him as well. That was clearly the best win of his career. But once again, that was also a much easier opponent than Punahele Soriano. Cody Brundage is 6-1, came in on short notice. It was his UFC debut. Soriano, he only has 2 more fights with an 8-1 record in comparison to Maximov, but he has 3 UFC fights, and he has more experience against a higher level of opponents. Nick Maximov, he's still a very much developing fighter. In the stand-up, I don't really have a lot to say. I mean, I'm sure he's been working a lot on his boxing at Nick Diaz Academy. I've seen him training at other gyms, like I've seen him training with the Garcias and things like that. But I haven't really seen much of his striking in fights. has a pretty good high guard, big overhead right. I've seen him throw some body kicks and some high kicks, but mainly just wants to try to use that high guard, walk you down, and get the takedown. And he's a former college wrestler. I'm a fan of how he always usually attacks single legs. That's a very effective takedown in the higher weight classes. And he's good at getting takedowns against the cage. When he can back fighters up, he'll get it on the double, circle to the back. He is good at chain wrestling. He'll shoot, reshoot. Was able to get the double leg on Cody Brothers against the cage a couple times. He's a former college wrestler himself. And he will shoot some bad takedowns, but I think he has no fear of being on his back, so he doesn't really care if you stuff the takedown and put him on bottom. But someone eventually could time that with the knee or with the uppercut and really hurt him. Sometimes he can stay in positions longer than he should also. Like, for instance, he could shoot in, get stuffed, but stay in on the single leg or the double leg and just kind of sit there, allow his opponents to lay heavy on him. And I think he just trusts that eventually he could scramble to a better position. But he could get tired doing that. A fighter could pound him out. The ref could stop it early. A lot of things could happen in those type of positions. And Maximov is a lead in the jiu-jitsu realm. I mean, his defensive wrestling looked really good in his last fight also. And when he can get on top, the guy is just a beast. He has really good control, really good back takes. He is really good at just stayed very active on top, transitioning from position to position. He is always looking to get the finish. He has a great gas take. And for a higher weight class guy, I do think that his gas take is really elite. I haven't really seen him get hit or get touched too hard yet. And Puna is obviously a really big power puncher. With him being in the boxing gyms, I do imagine he's got it cracked. He could take a shot, but it's still not too known. I mean, with Punahele Soriano, we got a guy that likes to come forward, throw big, heavy hooks, super explosive, powerful guy, huge power, one-punch knockout power, good in-and-out movement. He is very fast in and out. I feel like he's a much more explosive, better athlete in comparison to Maximov. And he hasn't gotten to show off his wrestling like at all. I mean, in any of his fights, really. At least defensively, he was able to show a little bit of offensive wrestling against Jamie Pickett, where he did get a little bit tired in that fight and had to resort to the wrestling to avoid the forward pressure of Pickett and just kind of grind him out on the ground. I mean, from what I've seen, though, on the feet, Soriano is not really that great either. He throws really wide and looping shots, and he's very, loads up on a lot of his punches, but seems much more confident and just willing to let go, stay on the feet in comparison to Maximov. And Maximov wants to bring the fight to the ground, go to work from there. He's a bag of submissions. He has good ground and pound, good control, great cardio, and his stand-up is just very green. I mean, Punahele Soriano is a guy that's no stranger to wrestling either. He wrestled in college, and I would say he has the more amateur wrestling credentials. He was a Division III All-American. He also has a judo background. But Punahele Soriano in his fights has only had to defend one takedown attempt, I believe. In this fight, he's going to have to defend probably one takedown, or more than one takedown attempt in the first couple of minutes of the fight if he gets stuff a couple. So, way different fight. I feel like anything could happen in this one because if Maximov could get the fight to the ground, tire out Soriano, then maybe he could just dominate the rest of the fight. But he's just too green to me. He's not fought enough good opponents. He's not proven his striking. He's facing a power hitter that's explosive with good takedown defense. And I'm just going to go with Soriano. I'm going to say Soriano wins by second round KO, TKO, maybe even first round. I just feel like Soriano has too much experience. He's the wrestler as well. He has forward wrestling. And he's explosive, better striker, better athlete, trains at the better gym. So I think that Punahele Soriano should get this one done here. And in this next fight, we got Jack Hermansson taking on Sean Strickland. Really fun fight. Sean Strickland, he's the favorite here. This is going to be his second consecutive main event. He's starting to build a fan base due to his win streak, his performances in the cage, his antics in the cage and outside the cage. He's a funny guy, and he's deciding to go kind of full heel, so to say. So as long as he keeps winning, I'm sure his fan base will continue to swell. He was linked to a fight with Luke Rockhold for a while, and that had some heat on it, but Rockhold pulled out. And when you're matched up with Luke Rockhold, that means you're really close to a title shot. The last two opponents who Rockhold has fought have gone on to fight for the title very soon after. Strickland's opponent, Jack Hermansson, a bit more of a low-key guy, but no stranger to the big stage. This is going to be his 4th UFC main event. His previous 3, he's gone 1-2. His first main event opportunity came against Jacare Souza. He answered the call and picked up a nice win in that one. But then his last 2 main events, he's came up short against Jared Cannonier and Marvin Vettori. Hermansson, he's coming off a victory, though. He was able to beat a motivated Edmund Shabazian in May. And if you look at the resume of both these fighters in the middleweight division, Hermansson has clearly fought the better opponents. Strickland, he's not lost in the weight class, but Uriah Hall is the only fighter Strickland has fought that was ranked in the top 10. Hermansson's been in there with guys like Marvin Vettori, Kelvin Gastelum, Jared Cannonier, Jacare Souza, Thiago Santos. And the winner of this fight is going to go on to probably fight in a title eliminator match, most likely, or maybe even get a crack at the title next. I think they're going to have to wait for the winner of Blonde Brunson versus Cannonier. But if Brunson wins, maybe the UFC would not want to make a 3rd rematch in a row for Israel Adesanya's next title defense if he beats Whitaker. Even if Whitaker beats Adesanya, he's also fought Brunson. So there's definitely a chance the winner of this matchup is fighting for a UFC title next. Strickland is the fighter I think is more likely to get the title shot if he wins. He's the favorite in this fight. He's undefeated at middleweight, won 5 fights in a row, and he's just come back with a different attitude and mindset since returning from his motorcycle accident. Jack Hermansson has to get the win here, though. He's close to becoming a gatekeeper in the division. He's a beast. He's definitely a very tough out, but outside of his wins over Gastelum and Jacare, and both those wins have not aged the greatest, he has not done the best against the upper echelon of the division. He lost to Jared Cannonier, lost to Marvin Vettori, and if he loses to Strickland as well, he may become a fighter that people have to beat to get into the top 5. He's 33 years old, so the time is now for Hermansson to make a run if he wants to become a UFC champion. And looking at this fight, I mean, this is a totally different fight than Sean Strickland has had to face that's come back from injury. In his 5 fights since returning in 2020, moving up to middleweight, Strickland has only had to defend 1 takedown attempt. He has been able to beat some good grapplers during his career. He beat Alex Garcia, he beat Court McGee, he beat Brennan Allen. But I think it's safe to say Hermansson is a cut above those guys. The best wrestler by far that Strickland has fought was Kamaru Usman, and that fight did not go Sean's way. He was able to stuff 6 of 8 of Usman's takedowns, but Usman had over 8 minutes of top control. He really completely dominated the fight. And, at first I was thinking that I was going to be solid on Strickland, like pretty confident in a pick on him, maybe even a bet on him. But when I was looking at the fight, I almost went the other way, man. I was very close to switching and picking Jack Hermansson here. I still am going to go with Strickland, but Hermansson definitely has more weapons. On the feet, he throws a lot of those oblique kicks, round kicks, front kicks. He throws some high kicks. He has decent hands. I mean, his jab is all right. He has a long reach, and he's always moving in and out. Pretty good speed. And if you watch Strickland's fights, I mean, he does have a really good jab himself. And his defense has definitely improved a little bit. He's good at blocking and returning, catching shots more recently. And his pressure, I think, has done a good job of kind of mitigating a lot of opponents' offense, where I feel like in fights previous, like when he used to fight at welterweight, a lot of his fights or certain fights he would like to be on the outside and kind of try to play the counter game more. And I'm going to be kind of interested to see what his game plan is in this fight, if he's going to be so willing to walk down and pressure Hermansson as he was his other opponents, because there's a way bigger threat of the takedown in this fight. And Hermansson is going to be shooting singles. That's a takedown that Strickland has kind of struggled against. If you watch his fight with Usman, he was taken down pretty easily with the single leg. And even though he was able to create scrambles, he's definitely hard to hold down. It kind of slowed his striking, and it made the fight easier for Usman on the feet too. And Usman was able to rack up a lot of control time when he actually got Strickland flat on the ground. Hermansson, in terms of the striking, I feel like defensively, like I said, offensively, he's pretty decent. Like, he has a good repertoire of weapons. He is tough. He has good cardio. He tries to push the pace. But his defensive boxing is not good. He doesn't really move his head. He likes to shell up instead of move his feet when guys throw combinations at him sometimes. His body is wide open. I think that ripping the body to open up the headshots or shot is a good strategy to use. And another thing is Hermansson is struggling against 1-2s sometimes. Like, I've seen him get dropped the 1-2 against Marvin Vettori, and Mitchabazian hurt him really bad with the 1-2. And Strickland's 1-2 is crisp, it's fast. I mean, the guy has some really loose hands, really nice boxing. He's way more one-dimensional in terms of he really likes to only box with the feet. He'll throw some nice 1-2s. He makes in some hooks and really has fluid, loose hands. He does a good job of picking his shots well. And he'll overwhelm guys with his forward pressure, his volume. He will mix in some leg kicks sometimes, but just not the biggest kicker, really. And doesn't really like to force his grappling offensively. He will catch kicks sometimes to get takedowns, so I wouldn't be shocked if he caught a kick and put Hermansson on his back or something. But, if the fight goes to the ground, Hermansson is going to want to be there, so I think Sean should probably try to just keep it standing, even if he can get on top. But Hermansson, it's going to come down to if he can hit the takedowns. Strickland, he hasn't really showed, like, against a lot of grapplers, like, there's not really a lot of film to say, okay, he's going to stuff these takedowns. But I do think that he's a guy that has good enough jiu-jitsu acumen. And from what I've seen from Hermansson, giving up position in certain fights, losing position in certain fights. Even though Hermansson, when he can get into dominant positions, like take the back, flatten you out, or get really heavy and mount, he can really posture and do big damage with his ground and pound. He can also get a little bit too hasty, lose position. I think Strickland will be a hard guy to control on the mat. But Hermansson, I mean, if he starts this fight well, can initiate some wrestling, get the fight to the ground, get Strickland thinking that he can open up the striking a little bit more and be effective in that realm, definitely has a chance to win. Like, if I was picking this fight from a betting perspective, I would go with Hermansson. I feel like he's proved himself more in terms of high-level fights as well. But I just feel like his defense on the feet is not that great. I don't think he's going to be able to just completely manhandle and take down Strickland with ease. And I do think that if he takes him down, Strickland will be able to work back up to his feet. And I just think on the feet, Strickland is going to be very active. He's going to be in Hermansson's face. And I think he's going to be a little bit better. He's going to land more on the feet with his hands. He might hurt Hermansson a couple times. But this fight is a toss-up to me, man. I think it could go either way. I'm not confident on my pick here. And I really kind of wanted to switch to Hermansson, but after watching that fight with Marvin Vettori, I just couldn't do it because I feel like Strickland has a lot better hands than Marvin, and Marvin had a lot of success with his boxing. I feel like Strickland could do the same. It's just if Strickland has that same level of takedown defense and get-up ability that Vettori has, because Hermansson was able to get him down a couple times. Vettori was able to get up really, really impressively. He defended a lot of takedowns as well, showed great cardio. So I think this fight is up in the air in terms of who's going to win. I think it's a very competitive, very close fight. But I'm going to go with Sean Strickland via close competitive decision here. I'm going to go with Strickland. I'm not super confident though, but Strickland by decision is my pick here. As far as my parlay of the week this week, I'm going to go with a parlay of Denise Bondar and Jailton Almeida. For my most confident pick of the week for this week, it's going to be Jailton Almeida. And yeah, guys, hopefully you like this breakdown. Tell me what you think about it down below in the comments. Put a like down below. Check out the Patreon if you want access to my full card bets for this card. If you want access to my LFA betting video and LFA bets as well. Been doing really well on the betting front recently, so really appreciate everyone that's supporting over there, and hopefully you're getting your money's worth cashing out on some plays. And yeah, guys, I'll be back next week. We're going to be breaking down UFC 271, big pay-per-view, so definitely come back and enjoy that video as well. But yeah, guys, I appreciate everyone that listened, and I'll talk to you guys later.